The Washington Post, for the first time in a long time, actually did some pretty amazing journalism about the war in Afghanistan. They basically dug up hidden interviews from 2014 that were suppressed by the government. So there was this big report, the SIGAR report, Special Inspector General Report in Afghanistan. That does not spell cigar. I digress. Scratch that. All you need to know is there was a report on Afghanistan, and the responses were not what the military-industrial complex wanted, and so they were just like, X-nay on the report's gay, and then they basically hid a lot of the interviews because they were so damning about what was going on there. So there are people directly involved with the war who are just like, we have no clue what's going on over there. We have no clue what our mission is. We're totally aimless, and we're just there. Now, you guys might hear that and go, well, duh, of course, that we knew that's what was going on. But it shouldn't be like that. I mean, it shouldn't be like that. If we're at a war, and we're putting American lives on the line, and we're potentially killing civilians over there, and we're wasting all this money, you damn well better have some goals. You damn well better have a mission. You better have, an overarching philosophy and an end game and like all that stuff you need to have. But no, they didn't. So the worst possible thing you could think of when it came to the war in Afghanistan, that was the reality. The reality was, no, we're aimless and we're here. We don't even know why we're here. We don't even know what's going on. And it gets even worse than that. So first I want to show you a segment here. This is Sagar from Rising on Hill TV. Let's watch his spiel on it, and then I want to come back and give you more information.
Yesterday, all three cable networks went live for more than 10 hours to bring you the riveting rival testimony of the House Intelligence Committee counsels from the Republican and Democrat side. As you can imagine, they disagreed with each other. The Democrats asked questions to get sound bites for Twitter to the Republican one, and the Republicans did the same to the Democrat. And when the pundit class was done salivating over this elite drama over whether it's okay to temporarily endanger Ukrainian military aid, they picked up a story of equal importance, whether the FBI investigation into President Trump was properly initiated, and whether these officials conducted themselves above board. As predicted, MSNBC and the New York Times spun the newly released IG report as vindicating for the FBI. Conservatives pointed out the many documented instances of abuse of power. But both these stories perfectly tell you the obsessions of our political elite. Their bad faith blame games marked as a real struggle over who gets to pull the levers of our American oligarchy. And they utterly pale in comparison to the one that we briefly touched on this show yesterday, when the Washington Post revealed a secret government report which detailed American officials admitting on the record that for nearly 2 decades we were systematically lied to about the war in Afghanistan, and that statistics were manipulated at the request of the White House and the Pentagon to paint a rosier picture. That to this day, we have no idea what we are doing in that country. How much time do you think that got on cable news? I'll tell you the answer. Barely any, because that story broke in the morning before all these very important shenanigans started. If there is going to be a long congressional inquiry, shouldn't it be on this? Shouldn't every single U.S. official who secretly told U.S. government investigators they lied to us come and be forced to admit it to our faces? And if we are to have a long report on the conduct of American government officials and finds failures, recommends fixes like that IG report, shouldn't we have that about a war that has cost us $2 trillion? Impeachment is a 46 issue. I can bet you that this would have 100% support. But sadly, I, like you, know that this will never happen because it implicates everybody. A report released by the Washington Post demonstrates perfectly the bipartisan boondoggle that is the war in Afghanistan. The Obama White House lied to us just as much as the Bush White House, and probably just as much as the Trump White House. There are no cheap political points to be scored, and besides, everybody is making too much damn money. The report really shows, in its totality, how people of immense power can still be cowed by the military-industrial complex. Anytime they had misgivings about what was going on Afghanistan. As a former 3-star general who was Afghan policy head for Obama and the Bush White House, Douglas Lute, said to investigators, quote, "We were devoid of a fundamental understanding of Afghanistan. We didn't know what we were doing. What are we trying to do here? We didn't have the foggiest notion of what we were undertaking." Furthermore, a 2017 study even found that the swing states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin would have gone for Hillary Clinton if the number of war casualties were lower. Higher military casualties can literally swing elections, as they should. All of this is to say is if we're going to have a national debate over something, let it be this. Let it be about how we spend billions of dollars a day in a godforsaken part of the world that doesn't want us there. And let all of you who are voting in the Democratic Party think long and hard about who you decide to support. Because if you're not ready on day one to totally commit yourself to a different direction, you're just going to get steamrolled like all of the rest of them.
Saagar is a conservative, for those of you who don't know. Now, he's blown away by this report, as am I, as a lefty. So I want to give you some more of the details here and what really went on in the Afghanistan war. So one of the big findings of the paper is that the government routinely manipulated numbers to mislead the public into thinking we were winning. Whatever winning means, because again, they didn't bother to define what winning would be. But they routinely misled the public as to how well we're doing. So here's an example of that. What they would do is, so Obama ordered the surge in Afghanistan. The idea was to finally win the war and then come home. You order the surge, tens of thousands more troops, and what would happen is the violence would go up when we do the surge. So there would be more Taliban bombings. There would be more violence across the board. What the government would do is they would then, have these committee hearings where they're asking the generals, like, how are we doing in the surge, sir? And they would be like, well, we're doing really well, and our numbers show us that the insurgency is in its last throes, and the increase in violence is because they're getting desperate and they're on the way out. That's what they would say. So stop and think about that for a second, because logically it makes no sense. If you do the surge and violence goes up, they say, well, that's obviously a sign of victory because that means they're in their last throes and it's about to be a wrap for them, so they're desperate. If the violence goes down, what do they say? They go, oh, the surge is working. Violence has subsided. So obviously that's a win. Nobody wants more violence. So then wait, now it's a non-falsifiable claim. No matter what happens, they square peg round hole the situation, and they're like, oh no, but that's what we wanted to happen. Oh, the violence went up? No, we wanted that, and that's a sign we're winning. Oh, the violence went down? Oh, no, we wanted that, and that's a sign we're winning. So no matter what happens, you take that as a sign that you're winning. And this also happened in Iraq, by the way, when they did the surge in Iraq. Same thing. They said the same thing. Oh, the violence went up? Pfft, that's a sign we're winning. Oh, the violence went down? Oh, that's a sign we're winning. So no matter what happens, whenever they'd have these hearings, the military officials with their proper military uniforms on, with their square jaws, would sit there and be like, yes, we're winning this war. And it would never make any sense what they were saying. So that's the first thing, which should have been a red flag to everybody. And by the way, again, we're going to get back to the media, but shame on the media for not, if I could spot that logical contradiction, that it's a non-falsifiable claim and no matter what you say, you're winning, how come they can't see it? How come they can't see it? Another thing is, we learned from these papers that the United States allowed our Afghanistan allies, who are warlords, by the way, to steal money like crazy, to loot the treasury, to get away with, robbing us 1,000 different ways. These are people who, and I'm going based off previous reporting, but we covered it on the show, some of these people had child sex slaves. And then when U.S. soldiers blew the whistle on it and were like, hey, dog, I know that this guy's supposed to be our ally, but they got like a kid chained to the bed. What are we talking about here? What would happen? Discharged. If you spoke up and you said, I see some stuff that's not okay with our allies, discharged. I don't know if they'd honorably discharge them or dishonorably discharge them, but they discharge them. And they're like, let me Let me introduce you to my new website, www.shh.com. So the United States is there in Afghanistan, arguing we're here to bring democracy and freedom and fix this country, and our allies are warlords who have child sex slaves out in the open? Do you really grasp how terrible that is? Do you really grasp how grotesque that is? Do you understand how that totally blows up the notion that we care about freedom, we care about democracy, we care about doing the right thing, we care about being the world police? There's got to be ulterior motives, and Sagar touched on him there. He said, hey man, a lot of people were making a lot of money, namely the military-industrial complex. Go talk to Boeing, go talk to Honeywell, go talk to Raytheon. Go talk to, in the case of Iraq, Halliburton, KBR. Go talk to all these defense contractors. They are fantastically wealthy as a result of these wars. $7 trillion spent in Iraq when all is said and done by 2053. Afghanistan, $2 trillion. That's $9 trillion right there, all on wars where nobody's even bothering to define what victory would mean. What would that mean? What does that mean? What does it mean? How do you win? What's winning? What is it? What is winning? Well, we got attacked on 9/11, so we have to get Osama bin Laden. He's dead. He's been dead for a while. Why didn't you immediately pack up and come home immediately after he was killed? Well, Saddam Hussein had something to do with 9/11, even though he didn't at all, by the way. But what we're going to say this in the aftermath that it's Saddam Hussein's fault. He's dead. He's dead. Why aren't you coming home? Why aren't you coming home? Why aren't you coming home? Well, Al-Qaeda is a massive problem in Afghanistan. Well, our own intelligence agencies say there's fewer than 100 Al-Qaeda members in Afghanistan. Declare victory and come home. What are you doing? Maybe there are ulterior motives. Maybe it is about the military-industrial complex profits. Maybe it is about securing the mineral wealth that's in Afghanistan. Maybe it is about the massive oil wealth that's in Iraq. Maybe it's about controlling this region of the world geopolitically because we view ourselves as on a chessboard with Russia and we don't want to allow them to get anywhere near that kind of power that we already have. Maybe there are other concerns. All the U.S. soldiers who die in the meantime, collateral damage. Just tell them we're fighting for freedom as they protect warlords with child sex slaves. It's fine. All the dead civilians in Iraq and Afghanistan, gotta break a couple legs to make an omelet, am I right? Behind the scenes, they were admitting, the top people in charge of the war, they were like, okay, I don't know what we're doing there. I don't know what our goal is. We don't even know what's going on. There were stories of soldiers going to the generals like, all right, we're here. Show us where the bad guys are. And they're like, bad guys? See, what happened was there was sun was in my eyes, and I don't even know what we were sent out here, and then I saw that there was over the top of the hill, and then I don't even know if I see him no more. Guys, this was all a sham. All of it. You were lied to by George W. Bush. You're lied to by Barack Obama. Now you're lied to by Donald Trump. Obama and Trump both, at least nominally, campaigned on getting out of some of these wars. And they're increasing them. They're increasing them. And now we learn it was all, we've been lied to every step of the way. Every step of the way we've been lied to. There is no goal. How many times have I told you? Go ask somebody who's still for the Iraq War or the Afghanistan War. Oh, okay, you're for the war? Define victory. You'll hear crickets because they have nothing to say. How can you possibly be for a war and not even know why you're there? How? Oh my God. This entire time we've been lied to, every step of the way. Now, the final part. And Sagar touched on this very well. The media. This report was done in 2014. It wasn't released until now. Credit to the Washington Post. That's not a sentence you hear me say often, but in this case, you're hearing me say it. How terrible is our media that as we have multiple wars going on, they're over there. Let's cover anything but that. Your job is to be a check on the government, a check on the people in power. You're not doing that. You're doing the opposite. You're in cahoots with them. You are. You're in cahoots with them. You're covering it up with them. And then even now, after this is released, years too late, because it should have been released at the time, we're in year 18 of the war in Afghanistan. They're barely even discussing it. Guys, impeachment got like 20 times more coverage than this bombshell story about how the same way we were lied to in the war in Iraq, we've been lied to throughout the entire Afghanistan war, every step of the way. The media is barely discussing it. Impeachment's getting way more coverage. And so what happens, guys? The story's going to go away. It's going to go away. And we're still going to be in Afghanistan. We're still going to be in Iraq. We're still going to be wasting U.S. taxpayer money, U.S. soldiers' lives, and killing innocent civilians over there. Because the media refuses to calibrate their outrage meter properly. They're saving all their outrage for impeachment and for diving into the details of some goofball's testimony. Something that we know, by the way, it's going to get through the House, and everybody's going to be so insufferable and smug. Oh, we got him, we got Trump. Then it's going to die in the Senate, and all the Slay Queen memes for Nancy Pelosi are going to feel like they're a million years in the past. Everybody's going to go, wow, who could have seen this coming? I can't believe this died in the Senate. I'm telling you right now, that's what's going to happen. We know that's what's going to happen. All the time spent on this, the majority of every single day of the news covering that, when we know how it's going to end up. I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm giving you the facts. You could say, well, you're wrong, Kyle, because maybe it doesn't even get through the House. Fair, but I think it is going to get through the House. But in terms of the Senate, it's dying in the Senate. But you're spending the majority of every single day on something that you know is a dead end. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can't cover impeachment. Of course you can. It's happening. It's news. Cover it. But we just got a bombshell story about how an 18-year war we've been in, where we spent $2 trillion, thousands of American lives, and thousands of civilians on the other side, how it was all nonsense. How we're protecting warlords who have child sex slaves. How we were repeatedly lied to by generals in their fancy military uniforms when they kept telling us, oh, yes, we just need a little more time, and this is a good sign that the violence is going up because that means that we're winning. In a system that made sense, this would be the story that gets the breathless 14-hour coverage in one day, and it would be breathless coverage every single day until finally the government says, no mas, we're pulling out of Afghanistan. No mas, we're doing it. But instead, since the media didn't calibrate their outrage meter, they don't really care. They don't really care. Some of them, by the way, some of the networks take money from the military-industrial complex. Isn't that a weird coincidence that they're not going to be outraged over this, but they're getting money from the people who got rich as a result of this? And everybody gets screwed in the meantime. And everything just keeps going as is. It's time to change it, man. We can't take this anymore. This is insanity. This is sheer insanity. You're getting more coverage of this here than you're going to get on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News all day combined. However long this segment is, I don't know how long this segment is, roughly 20 minutes, whatever it might be. This is more coverage you're going to get on a YouTube show and more in-depth coverage than you're going to get from all the major networks combined. Again, that's not because I'm so great. It's because they are so bad. War is an incredibly serious endeavor, and it should be treated as such. But it's not. They don't care. Even though we've been lied to repeatedly, even with all the disastrous consequences, even though we know it's going nowhere, nobody can even define victory. Even though the polls show less than 20% of the American people want to be in Iraq, want to be in Afghanistan. They don't care. They're not going to do their job properly. And the military-industrial complex will keep chugging on. We have to put an end to this. And I have to admit, at this point, I don't even know how we're going to do it. But we have to put an end to it. Doesn't mean all of us getting out in the street. Doesn't mean a general strike. Doesn't mean adding that to our list of demands when we do a general strike for Medicare for all and free college. Do we end all the wars to that? Because I think we should. Because this is sheer lunacy. This is a country that has lost its way. You do know that we used to say about Afghanistan, It's the graveyard of empires, we called it, because previous empires, their time was up because they wasted so much blood and treasure in Afghanistan. The Soviet Union spent, I think, over a decade in Afghanistan, and we called it the graveyard of empires. The Soviet Union collapsed after the war in Afghanistan. We've been there 18 years. We've been there probably almost double the amount of time that the Soviet Union was in there. And it already has the nickname, the Graveyard of Empires. What are we doing? There's no captain steering the ship, man. There's no captain steering the ship. I don't even know if we could turn this Titanic around. It's that bad.